The United States has officially entered the Iran conflict by bombing key nuclear sites, 3 of them in particular. This happened yesterday, and it was the most telegraphed bombing campaign of all time. And yet it still had the capacity to catch us by surprise somehow, because it was such a severe escalation that Israel has fantasized about, that American leadership has fantasized about for decades at this point. But it was obvious that it was going to happen. And they also sent in decoys to do like diversion techniques, diversion tactics. But ultimately, there were some people, myself included, that said that this was going to happen this weekend. Going after the analysis of like people who are well resourced or well sourced that still have motion. Seymour Hersh being the person that I'm, of course, talking about here. The legendary journalist Seymour Hersh was one of the few journalists that was even talking about America definitely striking Iran. The 2 weeks notion was obviously a smokescreen, as I talked about extensively. And it should not come as a surprise to you. When he said 2 weeks, what do we say here? I said over and over again, it's not going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be this weekend, because he's just saying 2 weeks, because everything he says is just a misdirection. Everything he says is a misdirection, and that it was inevitable that it was going to happen this weekend. And it did. Okay? Baba lütfen bağırmayın.
An Iranian reporter films a plume of smoke near the Fordo underground nuclear site. He claims there's no sign of major damage to the facility. But last night, the US struck Iran's 3 uranium enrichment plants using missiles and huge bunker-buster bombs. This was their main and most challenging target, the Fordo nuclear site, built deep underneath a mountain near the holy city of Qom. Satellite images from today show signs of possible damage. President Trump's decision to attack is one of the most consequential of his political career.
Thank you very much.
He struck a triumphal
Thank you for the
tone.
50 gifted subs.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
By the way, remember what I said yesterday when we were talking about servile nations? Remember when I said the Gulf is bad, right? The Gulf leadership is bad. They're dogs to America, Turkey included. You know, all these NATO countries like Turkey, they speak a big game against Israel, but they still absolutely follow the American line, right? Tooth and nail. But then I said there are, however, a group of countries that consider themselves to be sovereign. They consider themselves to be a sovereign nation, and that group of countries is not sovereign whatsoever. They are servile, and that is the European Union, okay? European countries on the European continent have demonstrated once again how little dignity and how little autonomy they truly have. Keir Starmer. Canada also came out as well. Only a couple weeks ago, they were talking extensively about how they wanted to decouple from America, at least on the optics front, against Israel, stating that what Israel was doing was untenable, unmanageable. When European leaders act as though they are a group of sovereign states, they are lying to their citizens. When they act as though they are bastions of liberal democracy, they are the upholders of liberal democracy, they are lying to their citizens. They are trying to keep up appearances, and that mask is slipping. They are all but vassals for Western empire and its interests, and that much is clear. Once again, I told you. And that is precisely the reason why you heard every single Western leader come out and go, Israel has a right to defend itself. Iran cannot have nukes, as though they're a part of the Republican Party in the United States of America, as though they're Trump loyalists here. When America says jump, every other country says how high. Okay, Maybe they agree with the U.S. If they agree with the U.S., why were they at least trying to acknowledge and wash away the broad discontent that their countries' populations have towards America and Israel? When that kind of public distaste is happening endlessly over and over again, in order to maintain the notion of democracy, the idea that there is some sort of like liberal democracy happening, European leaders have to respond. And in that response, they try to make it seem as though they are kind of trying to separate from America. They're punishing Israel, right? They're critical of Israel, but they're not. They're not critical of Israel. And this kind of action from America and Israel basically hits the reset for all of our politicians and your politicians in Europe as well, and politicians all around the world. Like, I thought at least there would be some people that hit partisan notes and say things like, oh, why are we bombing Iran? Why is Israel bombing Iran? They're opening an eighth front? Really? Like, don't they have their hands full killing Palestinian children every day, which they have nonstop, by the way? As Senator Chris Van Hollen from the Democratic Party posted 2 days prior, since Israel started bombing Iran, Israel has also killed 400 Palestinians, almost all of them at the fake aid sites that they've created with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a fake aid site created by both of the belligerents, the United States of America and Israel, to do perfidy, which is illegal, trickery, and aid distribution. Having a military mechanism is completely illegal. And that is what Israel and America are doing in Gaza right now. The Strait of Hormuz has been closed. So yeah, my expectation is that Iran is going to do something. I thought it would be limited. We shall see. So far, they have not done any sort of like imminent retaliation to American bases and American assets in the region. They've only spoken about how they are going to take the legal route in terms of the nuclear proliferation stuff. So this right here is interesting. Russia, China, Pakistan proposed draft UN security. These are the only allies that Iran has in the region, right? Aside from the axis of resistance. They proposed a draft at the UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate unconditional ceasefire in the Middle East. I wonder if this package will include Israel. I suspect that Iran is interested in blocking the Strait of Hormuz, and U.S. now wants China to fucking join in on the fray, get involved, and only to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz and disrupting global oil flows. But yeah, this is what I was going to say. This has been the most consequential statement from Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chair of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. This is the most militant thing I've heard from. What have the Americans accomplished with their nighttime strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran? 1, critical infrastructure of the nuclear fuel cycle appears to have been unaffected or sustained only minor damage. 2, the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Now, this is very big escalation in terms of the language being used. No Iranian leadership has said anything of the sort so far, but Russia's statements here, I would go so far as to say, are even more significant than Iran. But this is Medvedev, so I don't know if this is all that consequential. Like, it would be definitely a little bit, it would be more impactful if it was Lavrov, or if it was obviously Vladimir Putin, something along those lines. But this is basically the most militant statement that I have heard so far. And I think Russian statements, not Medvedev, okay, but Russian statements coming from Russian envoys, make no mistake, are more important than even the Iranian leadership in terms of understanding where this conflict might go. Listen to me. Trusting Russian talk? No. You listen. Russian statements on this, okay? Russian statements on this event on events that unfold in the Middle East is more consequential because it is a way to understand. It is a way to understand what this axis that is developing, or what this unified front that is developing against American imperialism in the region, what direction they may lead down. Because the Iranian side, there's differences in opinion, obviously. Like the IRGC is more militant. The Islamic Republic and the civil governance side is infinitely more restrained, infinitely more diplomatic. Russia still, however, is the big dog. My brother and his fiance is here. And as predicted, as I said yesterday, China, once again, the strongest of condemnations. Oh boy, what a condemnation. The strongest you've ever heard. Classic. Yeah. Just wait till China actually condemns Iran for blocking the Strait of Hormuz if they actually do so. Okay? But in any case, let's keep going through the Medvedev statement. The enrichment of nuclear material, like, this is obviously a fucking insane statement because he goes, and now we can outright say it. Future production of nuclear weapons will continue, implying that Iran was already in the process of developing nuclear weapons. This is not true. There is no evidence for this, right? There's no evidence for this whatsoever. So when he says that, that's the embellished part. But it's also important to recognize like which direction the Russian state might be heading down. Like he says, he goes 110% of the way, but the Russian government might be leaning in the, 40%, 50% of the way. Whereas the Iranian government, and what the Iranian government is saying is seemingly incredibly restrained, if that makes sense. Do you see what I mean? Do we have any of this verified by Iran? Why not get it from the horse's mouth? This is, I would say, not Medvedev, but like, I would be on the lookout in this situation to hear what Russia will say. I think Russia's statements here will be the most impactful ones. Okay? Russia's statements will show which direction this conflict will go. Russian actions will show which direction this conflict will go, because Russia's actions and Russia's statements, not Medvedev, the state, okay? The actual state, not this fucking guy, but the state itself and which direction they head here will either broaden this conflict, in a way that turns into like a Iraq style situation, or will potentially stamp out or will basically exhaust Israel to a degree where they won't be able to continue doing all of this nonsense, all of this madness, and will create an environment where there will be a managed negotiation to stamp out further Israeli aggression in the region, or potentially get America fully invested in implementing its grand design in the region and try to destabilize the Iranian regime. Because that is the goal here. As I have said, the ultimate goal here is not the fucking nuclear program. Nobody gives a fuck about the nuclear program. Please stop talking about the nuclear program. If you want to understand what the actual goal here is, the goal has always been the same since Benjamin Netanyahu said Iran has nukes, or the capacity to build nukes, since like 84 or something, or whenever the Israeli state started claiming that Iran had nukes. Okay, the goal has always been regime change. The nukes are the casus belli. Okay, I think it was 1992 when Benjamin Netanyahu first said it, but I'm saying that like they have entertained regime change for since the revolution started. I told you, Iran's foreign minister says he will, this was last night, actually, I think. Yeah. Iran's foreign minister says he will head to Moscow today and will meet Putin. So this is probably taking place right now. Do I personally think Iran should have nukes? If Iran had nukes, none of this would be happening, and the region would be an infinitely more stable region. It's just, It would be more stable in the direction that America doesn't want, though. It would be a region that had more stability because the countries in the region would have more power and more influence and more sovereignty over their own affairs. The only way to basically scale back Israeli aggression in this region is for there to be sovereign states, and there is no sovereignty unless you are outside of the banner of American influence. You do not have any sort of sovereignty whatsoever unless you have nukes. I'm sure that many of you have figured it out by now, but there is perhaps a reason why nobody does this to North Korea. You know what I mean? But they do this and have done this successfully. The countries that they've said have nukes or WMDs, like Iraq, like Libya. Okay? Pakistan probably looks at everything that's going on right now and goes, oh my God, what an amazing thing we did. Okay? Thank fucking Christ. Thank fucking Christ for that guy who came from the Netherlands and built this goddamn thing in a cave like Iron Man, okay? Yeah, Abdul Qadir Khan. A metallurgist working on centrifuge enrichment for Urenco joined the program at the behest of the Bhutto administration by the end of 1974. How would nukes be a deterrent, though? It's not like they'll use them, no. Yes, the whole point of having nukes is to never use them. The whole point of having nukes is that they will never use nukes on you. That's the whole point. Because here's the reality. If you have nukes, then other countries that have nukes will nuke you if you use your nukes. And therefore, when you get the nukes, you're not supposed to use the nukes. Okay? The entire purpose of getting the nukes is so you don't get nuked. The threat of using the nukes is what is at the heart of the mutually assured destruction that is the reason why so many countries have engaged in nuclear proliferation. I'm a firm and committed believer into denuclearization, as the NPT suggests is supposed to happen, but I think we all know it's not happening anytime soon. Abdus Salam was the other guy who founded the program but was kicked out of Pakistan because of his religion. His grave was also later desecrated on. That's crazy. Anyway, here is Mossad's very own, IDF's very own Barak Ravid. Netanyahu at a press conference, who Trump personally called and said, your Israel is safe now. Remember that. This guy's gotten awards from every American journalistic enterprise. Barak Ravid. Literally an agent of Israel, like straightforwardly. He is. I'm sorry. I know he works at Axios, but Donald Trump called him last night after bombing Iran and said directly to him, your Israel is safe. Anyway, Netanyahu at a press conference says, we will not be dragged into a war of attrition. When we achieve our goals, the fighting will stop. Okay. Well, as I said, when Netanyahu says something like that, just assume the opposite if you want to be right 90% of the time, as opposed to being right 10% of the time. When Netanyahu says something, it means the exact opposite. So he wants to do a war of attrition. Netanyahu said, oh, this will last 2 weeks. That's how you know it was going to be longer than that. Donald Trump says, oh, we want diplomacy. That's how you know it's not going to be diplomacy. Yeah, he said that about October. He said that on October 8th about Gaza, too. Oh, all right. But
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
Other satellite images from recent days show cargo trucks near Fordo. Iranian officials have said all enriched uranium had already been moved.
But Hasanabi, why would Iran be super aggressive when the only way they can really win is maintain the regime? Trump attacking nuclear sites doesn't really do anything. It's just promoting American weapons, really. And Iran has zero allies in the region other than Yemen. Why would they attack the U.S. and risk American support for regime change up 50%? It'd be a bad move. Great question. Here's the answer. Iran is a part of a American-caused an American-caused new world order that is being implemented, okay? You have Iran, China, Russia on one side as regional players, and China being the head of the axis, if you want to call it that. And then you have America and the entire Western nations on the other side, alongside Israel. Okay, Turkey is obviously a part of American, the American side as well. So, if Iran recognizes that destabilization is a necessity, or is a part of America's goals here, like decapitation potentially, either it happens tomorrow, or it happens a week from now, or it happens a month from now, or it happens 5 years from now, it will inevitably happen. Okay? It will inevitably happen. So if they want sovereignty, and if they want to basically try and stop the bleeding, either this happens with death by 1,000 cuts, a war of attrition, or they increase the intensity and make themselves an undeniable force in the region. And the only way to do that is by forcing Russia and China's hand into defending Iran. Considering how valuable of an asset Iran is to both of these countries, the fact that they've like basically all but written off Iranian sovereignty in this process is actually quite shocking to me. Are there not sanctions to put on these other nuclear powers like Pakistan and Russia that would limit how they supply nuclear arms to each other? Yes. But considering that there is a secondary network of a secondary market that was cultivated as a direct consequence of America's sanctions regime, and the way that America weaponizes SWIFT, you already have a lot of these countries that are not entirely in the sphere of American influence working around that and actively looking for alternatives and actively creating an organically created secondary market. Remember, America has designed sanctions in its sanctions regime in such a way that there is literally now a robust secondary market that can't even work within the global marketplace, because America already has hit them with like ridiculous restrictions to begin with. When you sanction everyone, you technically are just sanctioning yourself. And that's precisely what America has done. With the exception of like Western Europe, America's basically been like, you can't enter the Western European markets, which are very important, and you can't enter the American market, which is very important. These are consumer markets, okay? But when you do that, you inevitably create a secondary market of all of the people that have been sanctioned, and the sanctions that come down later are nowhere near as consequential or as impactful, because there is now a network that has been forcibly designed against said sanctions. Anyway, what I was trying to say, though, what I was talking about with respect to Iran here is that obviously, if Iran continues to show restraint, I think America will, if they stamp it out right now, even if they do quote unquote fake diplomacy in the interim, in the short term, they will inevitably do destabilization and regime change in the long term. And I think the Iranian government has to recognize that. So the actions that they take from this point on will be for their sovereignty. It won't just be for the regime's continuation, which is definitely the truth. That is definitely a significant factor in their calculation, but it's also for Iranian sovereignty in general.
The regime has reacted angrily. Trump had previously suggested he would wait 2 weeks to see if diplomatic efforts could reach a resolution.
The door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond.
Iran's initial response: 2 barrages of ballistic missiles fired at Israel this morning. One hit this residential area of Tel Aviv.
I will say, one of the smarter things that Iran could do right now is to feint and make it seem like they're hitting American targets, but then continue hitting Israel, which is, again, an American target technically. This way, you get to avoid you basically get to avoid creating a permission structure for further battles with Iran, because then you're like, well, we're hitting Israel. Like, we're not hitting America. We're just hitting Israel. What do you mean? And then it makes it a little bit more difficult for Trump and everybody else to fucking turn around and be like, no, we're going to the war. We're going to the war to defend Israel. However, make no mistake, America clearly does not need that permission. It does not need permission from its public. It does not need the majority opinion to be on board with going to war with Iran. That much was demonstrated last night.
A nursing home for the elderly and an apartment block were banned.
This, I suspect, if Iran is invested in its own sovereignty, this, I suspect, has actually created a permission structure for Iran to develop nukes, to actually develop nukes, to actually work on a nuclear proliferation. If they don't do that, at this point, they are fucking insane, for the record. If they still think that there is a peaceful solution, that there is any sort of diplomatic solution with the West, they are delusional.
Badly damaged, with dozens of people injured. Israel has reimposed its highest state of alert as Iran weighs up its next move.
There's been a significant amount of damage here and in other sites across Israel this morning, but everyone's bracing for further Iranian strikes.
Gura and his family have had to leave their home, but he's hoping Trump's actions could end the conflict.
You worried that things could get even worse now, or?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's going to a closing point more than an opening one, but we'll see.
Israel's Air Force said today it had destroyed more Iranian missile launchers as well as Iranian fighter jets. Israel's attacks have severely weakened Iran's military capabilities. But Iran could still choose to launch strikes on US bases in the region or close the strategic Straits of Hormuz. Doing so would incur major retaliation.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left.
These were the tense moments in the White House Situation Room last night. What happens next in this conflict is now in Iran's hands.
Well, the Trump administration has been making it clear in its messaging that its aim in Iran is not regime change, that it wants to enter into negotiations. Iran's regime faces a difficult dilemma. It's already deeply unpopular at home. It's invested billions into this nuclear program and will feel compelled, I think, to respond militarily in some way. But further direct confrontation with the US could lead to the regime's downfall. Adding to the pressure, Israel's attacks on Iran still appear to be continuing.
Thank you, Sikandar. Well, let's get the latest on the US reaction now from our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy. Siobhan.
Well, Kieran, it was only Thursday, remember, that the president said he'd give himself another 2 weeks to decide whether or not to attack Iran. And yet here we are 2 days later, and American bombers have already completed their mission, a mission which, by the way, he announced in a social media post yesterday.
Yeah, that photo was so whack because that was them trying to aura farm. Like, they wanted to do the iconic Barack Obama Situation Room post. Like 100%. I mean, they take photos like that all the time. But I know Trump is such a catty bitch with a penchant for drama and an eye for like theater and art like that. He cares about the aesthetics of things like that, which is precisely why they took these photos, right? They took these fucking photos in the Situation Room, and it, I think, had the opposite intention. He wanted to have like an iconic Obama style aura farming Situation Room photo. And I think it backfired spectacularly because he's wearing that whack ass fucking hat. And it looks like you're a clown. Like you look like a clown. Even on the optics front, you're fucking failing to farm aura. You look like Ronald motherfucking McDonald, man. Take the goddamn hat off. What is this? You look ridiculous. That's the silly side of this, but you know, it's something that he cares about. So,
of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, and they gave some very interesting details of how the mission played out yesterday, including the fact that the Pentagon used what they're calling decoy planes to try and confuse Iran. Viewers may not be aware, they may be, that yesterday there were reports of planes heading across the Pacific. The Pentagon said that they were designed to confuse Iran, but really B-2 jets then went east, apparently undetected. The mission was dubbed Operation Midnight Hammer. It was the first use ever of these massive bunker buster bombs in conflict. We know that 7 B-2 bombers carried out the strikes and that they were protected by fighter jets that went ahead of them. They dropped a total of 14 of these bunker buster bombs in all, while more than 24 Tomahawk missiles were fired from a U.S. Submarine. The Defense Secretary, like everyone else, has insisted this is not about regime
down to the name, the Midnight Hammer
change, that this was a precision strike that was never intended to be open-ended. Let's hear from him now.
Every American involved in this operation performed.
Oh my God, this was the other side of like clown world. Pete Hegseth was like, wasn't I a good brave boy? He came out and was like, hey, I didn't leak anything this time. I could not believe it. When I saw that fucking tweet of Pete Hegseth being like, see, I guess I don't leak everything. You guys called me Leak Hegseth. Turns out this time I didn't leak anything. It's like, and there are people who are glazing him as the fucking Secretary of Defense for doing basic OPSEC that would make the lowest level security clearance engineer fired from any position. You couldn't be the fucking janitor at a Lockheed Martin facility if you were operating like Pete Hegseth is, and he thinks this is an impressive feat. What an incredible, yeah, look, no leaks. 33,000 likes on this no leaks post. Like, what is going, like, Republicans are so stupid. They are so dumb. It feels like later down the line, we're going to be like, well, he's a big boy. He didn't piss his pants. A lot of you were making fun of the administration for doing poopies in their pants, but now they have diapers. Think about that. Think about how impressive that is, that now they're doing poopies and peepees, but in their diapers. They're big boys, and maybe one day they can get potty trained. What the fuck? No leaks.
Flawlessly. And I want to give recognition to our allies in Israel as well. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security.
Well, they're all very confident about the strikes, but this is, of course, a massive gamble for President Trump, a gamble that's already caused a big divide inside the Republican Party between those who are going along with the president and believe the strikes were the right thing to do, and those more hardline MAGA Republicans who did not want to see the U.S. involved in another war in the Middle East, and yet here we are today.
Last night, on President Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike.
At the Pentagon today, the U.S. Defense Secretary hailed what he called an incredible and overwhelming success. The reverberations focusing minds of America's adversaries and allies alike.
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear program and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that.
And look at this worm, dude. God damn it. Fucking kid starver, dude. God, he is such a spectacularly cucked creature. Okay?
Threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation.
Well, here the Prime Minister is chairing a meeting of the government's emergency Cobra group. Earlier, I spoke to Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds and I asked him, was President Trump right to bomb Iran?
We support the prevention of the Iranian...
No way. No way. You mean to tell me every single Western leader is coming out with statements of support for bombing Iran? What? Which, by the way, and this is, I guess, important for those who still care about these things, is a violation of numerous treaties and also a war crime. Okay? Make no mistake. You cannot just fucking go and bomb nuclear sites and nuclear facilities. You can't do that amidst a negotiation process. You can't do that at all in general. It's fucked up when Russia does it. It's fucked up when America does it. Except the difference is when America does it, everyone goes, oh no, it was so sick. Yeah, look. We play jihadi rules, which there are no rules. Dude, if you knew anything at all, if you understood how things have unfolded so far, you would recognize that, first of all, the jihadi rules is really funny, but the people that you consider the jihadis, okay, have been infinitely more diplomatic and infinitely more restrained than both Israel and the United States of America, okay? I hope they draft you, by the way. I hope you get drafted, straight up. Have fun. Have fun with those jihadi Shahed drones flying overhead. You will never get health care. You will never get a college education. You will never be able to own a home. And you will die for Israel. What a spectacular future for a bunch of cackling hyenas in this goddamn country. Just a bunch of angry fucking losers who are like, oh yeah, hell yeah, we got to do force projection all the time, baby, all around the world. Hell yeah, can't wait to go and get my ship blown up by a Shahed drone or maybe some Dongfang missiles. All I wanted was a college degree so I could maybe purchase a fucking home one day after getting a communications degree from college paid for by the goddamn government. You know, something that is provided to citizens all around the world unconditionally by governments that are infinitely more interested and invested in improving their labor force and making them more productive. Fucking awesome.
Regime having a nuclear weapon. We'd obviously proposed, as other European countries had, a peaceful diplomatic means in order to try and get to that objective. That was opposed not least by the Iranians themselves, and this has been the consequences of it.
A few hours ago, in the early hours of this morning, the British government was opposed to the US bombing Iran. President Trump went and did it. Do you think that was the right thing to do? Because a few hours ago you thought it wasn't.
Look, we wanted a diplomatic, peaceful means, but I can't possibly tell you anything other than Iran must...
We wanted diplomatic, peaceful means? Brother, America has openly stated that diplomacy was just a cover to do this. What do you mean we wanted diplomatic, peaceful? Like, at least condemn the goddamn American state. Like, every single politician basically still serves the exact same role, which is to normalize the belligerent and insane, violent nature of America and Israel. They all act as though they care about diplomacy. They all act as though they care about negotiations. They think you're stupid. They think you're too fucking stupid. And there are some who are, okay? There are definitely a lot of people who are stupid. But you should know that negotiations were taking place when America's interest in these negotiations were to simply use it as a cover for an Israel first strike and then a subsequent American first strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. Okay? Recognize this, please. And I hope many of you in here recognize this reality, but every single outlet, whether they are liberal, every single politician, whether they are leftist, liberal, wherever they are in the world, are currently unified on this. There are very few places that will tell you exactly what is going on. Every single outlet has been fantasizing about this opportunity for decades now. And once it has unfolded, once it finally happened, and Trump was responsible for it, everyone is saying, oh, well, we wanted diplomacy, but I guess, Iran just made it impossible. It's like, no, America had no interest in diplomacy. America had no interest in diplomacy. It is fucking ridiculous.
Not have a nuclear weapon.
So is it the UK intelligence assessment that Iran was weeks away from having a nuclear weapon?
I cannot give you a timeline.
Iran didn't submit to Trump, and now Khomeini is hiding in a cave. Khomeini is dead. Khomeini is dead. He's been dead for quite a while, actually. To the extent that this is the extent of your knowledge on what's going on.
On that, but it is absolutely our view that Iran was developing a nuclear weapon. I don't think anyone has the view.
President Trump said weeks away. That, we understand, is the premise for dropping these bombs. So it's quite important to know whether the UK government thinks Iran was weeks away or not from having.
I do not have information that relates to what the president has said.
Did Sir Keir Starmer, to your knowledge, offer any kind of support to President Trump in this action?
No request from the Americans for UK military involvement or the use of UK military assets was a part of this, and our position has been to try and achieve these ends by peaceful diplomatic means.
You've talked about the threat of Iranian-backed terror groups to people here in the UK. That's probably the thing that's most on the minds of our audience today. Is that threat greater today because of this action?
No. I mean, the threat is so enduring, so persistent, so consistent. It is that threat that would shape our response to the possibility of the Iranian...
Yeah, dude, the Iranian threat is so persistent to England. What are you saying? Like, what do you mean? What are you saying? Do you hear yourself? No, these countries are infinitely more threatened by Israel than Iran. What the fuck are we talking about? They are under threat. They have no sovereignty because America has designed the world in a way where these are just servile states. That's all they got. The notion that like Iran presents a significant threat to England is so psychotic. Your sovereignty was not taken away from you by Iran. That was America. Okay? Your interest in maneuvering in these conflicts in a way that actually steps away from the United States was not taken away from you, or steps away from Israel's opinions, was not taken away from you by Iran. It was taken away from you by Israel and all of the pro-Israeli groups that have taken root in every facet of British politics, just as they have taken root in every facet of American politics. The notion that America is not aligned with Israel and that Israel is basically an extension or the tip of the spear of American empire, that's true. This is real. But Israel also, because of its valuable position as a forward operating base for America, has been able to slowly but surely take the advisory role in a more meaningful capacity, where all of the fucking naysayers that go, hold on, maybe we shouldn't do this, get immediately squashed. We saw it happen. One of the fucking dudes, one of the what was it? It was a corporal that like was talking about how Israel is an ally that demands far too much from America and is dead set on implementing the Greater Israeli Project, the Greater Israel Project, and like exterminating Palestinians. Boom! Immediately, JNS writes an article about his fucking posts and he's gone. He's gone the next day. That is way, way more consequential than a normal ally or a simple vassal state. England can't do that, okay? England cannot do that. France, laughably, cannot do that. Germany, not colonel, sorry, I said corporal, colonel. There is no other country that has this level of prominence and control in a simple advisory role. And it's insane because Israel would not exist without unlimited support from the West.
Iranian regime obtaining a nuclear weapon, knowing how they behave without one, and countenancing what it would be like if they did have one.
Do you think that the US bombing Iran had to be legal under international law? Do you think that's an important principle?
It's important that all countries obey by international law. I imagine the calculation in this case would have been one based on self-defence and the calculus of interests around that. Our particular interest would be in the legality of any British action, which in this case has not been something we've been involved with.
Yeah, look. Breaking, the U.S. officially removes Colonel Nathan McCormick from his position at the Joint Chief of Staff for calling Israel a death cult and saying America is acting as Israel's proxy. He was right. He is right. He is quite literally right. The power is still very much in the hands of the American state. America controls Israel, okay? But this doesn't mean that Israel and pro-Israeli elements within American governance have not gone into this with a insane calculation that goes along with Israel's own personal ambitions in the region. Israel's own personal ambitions in the region might correspond to American interests in the region, but the reason why this is fucking happening is because Israel has taken the advisory role and is leading the charge. It's like having your attack dog control having your dog control you. It's like having your child slap you in the most American in the most American terms. It's like when, American children will call their parents by their first names and will throw a fucking tantrum, and then the American parents have nothing to say in that process. It's like Israel is that child throwing a fucking tantrum. That's what it is.
Is the founding director of the Institute of Iranian Studies at St. Andrews University. He joins me now.
Now, when you go to...
What do you think Iran is going to do next? Are they going to try and seek an off-ramp or escalation? What do you think it's going to be?
I think they will probably try both. I think they will seek privately to get an off-ramp. I think they're pretty shocked by what's happened. I think at the same time they will probably, in public at least, indicate all sorts of things that they will do, including, as we've heard, about the Straits of Hormuz, and then also possibly attacks on American bases.
You think they will actually try and target American troops?
I think they will be considering that. I think they're going to be highly reluctant to draw the Americans further in. I mean, there are no good options for them. Let's be honest.
And in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, just explain the significance of that for us, because that could end up with everyone paying a lot more for oil, right?
I think it could be. I mean, I think it's a difficult option for them because obviously it's sort of cutting off their nose to spite their own face in this respect. A lot of their own oil exports go through the Straits of Hormuz, and of course it could be reopened in fairly short order. So it's a threat, and I think at the moment that's where we're at.
I mean, the supreme leader of Iran is going to have a lot on his mind, isn't he, tonight? Because Donald Trump has effectively threatened to kill him.
He has, and I mean, I think one of the problems, for many Iranians is that the supreme leader's obviously gone into hiding, and one can understand to some extent that he's obviously extremely concerned, but it's not a great, for many Iranians who have been left really without any form of civil defense or protection, it's probably very worrying.
But if he does escalate and Donald Trump carries through that threat, we're looking at the fall of the supreme leader, and do you think that means the fall of the Iranian leadership as we know it?
I think the regime has some very, very difficult choices to make. If it wants to survive, it probably needs to find an off-ramp fairly quickly.
I mean, how strong or indeed weak does Iran look right now? It looks like, it's lost its influence in Syria, in Lebanon, and overnight it can't even defend its own airspace.
I think one of the more shocking things that will probably be settling in Tehran is just how friendless they appear. there are some voices of concern from regional allies, but there's very little actually going on that's supporting them. They have really lost, I think, in the last 2 decades, they lost a lot of regionals.
You said Khamenei is dead. Do you mean this literally? What are you saying? No, that one chatter said Khomeini, thinking that Ayatollah Khomeini, not Khamenei. God damn, dude. Fucking shut up for an hour. You keep spamming the same shit over and over again. Ayatollah Khomeini has been dead for a while. Khamenei, the current Ayatollah, is not. That dumb fuck chatter who was trying to justify America's bombing in Iran couldn't even fucking say the correct name of the current Ayatollah. My point was that that person is stupid. That person is demonstrating the stupidity of the average American who doesn't know where Iran is, who doesn't know who the Iranian leadership is, doesn't understand anything about Iran, but is simply trying to fucking defend these unjustifiable actions.
Well, the foreign minister of Iran is off to see President Putin. What's going to come of that?
He is, but President Putin has proved a very reluctant ally, I have to say. I mean, he's basically said, I think at one stage that the Iranians have never asked for our help, so we're not really, I think they can handle it on their own. Putin, obviously, at the moment, has got his own preoccupations. I think the Iranians may look to China, but at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any sort of substantive help coming their way.
What's your sense of how durable, then, the supreme leader is, and indeed the whole of the Iranian...
By the way, the International Atomic Energy Agency chief Rafael Grossi says Iran must account of its 400 kilogram stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%. And you know what's really funny about this? This right here shows that the International Atomic Energy Agency, that is supposed to be a completely independent agency, okay, is directly, and I will say this, they're not, like, until recently, they haven't been this aggressively Western slanted, in spite of the fact that 70% of all of their funding, 70% of all of their funding is directly about monitoring Iran. Okay? This is proof that they are not invested in anything but working in service of U.S. interests, U.S. and Israeli interests, especially considering that right now the International Atomic Energy Agency's primary focus should be the fact that America bombed nuclear facilities. Okay? America bombed nuclear facilities. You are the International Atomic Energy Agency. Your primary focus should be what took place yesterday. Israel has been bombing Iranian nuclear facilities for the past week. America just bombed Iranian nuclear facilities with bunker busters. What are you doing? How can anyone fucking see this group as anything but an arm of Western imperialism at this point? Where is the interest in presenting the fucking dangers, presenting the dangers that America has created for potential radiation, potential radiation? Well, like, what are we talking about? Isn't that your job? The Iranian foreign minister gave an entire fucking speech. A very important primary document. Iran's foreign minister gives first press briefing after the U.S. attack, stresses how this was a blow not just to Iran, but the UN system and the NPT. He says, humanity has come too far as a species to allow a lawless bully to take us back to the law of the jungle. Except we are living in the law of the jungle. And this guy thinks that Western countries have a conscience. You can only appeal to the logic and sensibilities of groupings of nation states that have a conscience. America does not have one. Okay? It is the fucking law of the jungle. These guys are almost delusional in the way that they operate, thinking that America and Israel are going to be pressured by Western nations. It is very obvious that Western nations are only operating with one singular purpose: death and destruction in the region. They do not care how many people die in the process. They don't even care if their people die. They don't care if your friends, your neighbors, your family members are over there and are a part of the 40,000 fucking troops that are positioned all around Iran. If they get fucking killed in the process, so be it. Because ultimately, American GDP will go up. You won't see any of the benefits of that, by the way. That even the bounty of empire will not actually turn around. Even the bounty of empire will not turn around and benefit your fucking wallets in the process, by the way. But it's all good. Line goes up. Israel gets to pursue its interests. It's fantastic. It's totally, totally great. It's great for everybody, except it's not great for you at all. But you have been deluded into thinking that, you know, there is a scary enemy out there and we just have to destroy them. And we can't let them fucking live normal lives, have their citizens go through the regular process of civil struggle so they can like modernize, have more civil liberties in the process. We just have to constantly never offer these populations a moment of respite to lick their wounds and to develop their societies. They have to constantly be fearful of American incursion. They have to constantly be fearful of American bombing campaigns. And every now and then, we will fucking blow them up.
As the president returned to Washington late on Saturday, the face and the swagger were maybe a hint of what was to come. He was back, we had been told, just for...
Yeah, here it is. This is a good Nick Mullen tweet. 2043, Lindsey Graham being kept alive by stem cells extracted from the testicles of a 5-year-old. Of course, the war with Iran was a mistake. We all know that. Qatar is different. They don't let gay people drive. Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for all the fucking takes, the hot takes. Like, you are not a part of the ownership structure of the military industrial complex. If you are a regular ass American citizen, every moment that you celebrate this kind of fucking violence is a moment that they're stealing your lunch money and you think you're an actual participant. You're not part of the team, brother. You are not a part of the team, little bro. You are not anywhere near the team. You're just fucking, you're a dumbass on the sidelines going, nah, actually, this is great. My lordship knows better how to fucking use the grain stocks than me. You are a fucking serf. Here's a take about the whole like Iran wants to kill us, death to America shit.
Iran is a thriving country of 70 million people. I want to know what makes them tick. I'm in their capital city, Tehran, with about 12 million people, and there's a veneer of hatred there. I mean, look at the banner there. It's an 8-story tall American flag made out of dropping bombs and skulls for stars and stripes, saying "Down with America." And we've all heard about death to America and so on. I was in a taxi in that traffic jam there later on that day. It was just silent, and suddenly my driver just bursts out, "Death to traffic." And I thought, no, wait a minute. I thought it was death to Israel or death to America. He said, right now it's death to traffic. And I said, well, what's with that? And he said, here in Iran, anytime something's frustrating to us and out of our control, we say death to that. And I thought about that. And I thought, boy, I'm so glad I'm here to understand this with a little more sophistication than a bumper sticker. So he speaks Farsi, he doesn't speak English, he's translating it directly, and to him he's saying, damn that. And I thought, well, have I ever said damn something? Have I ever thought, damn those teenagers? Well, yeah, I have. And, do I really want them to die and burn in hell for eternity? No. It's just after midnight. Turn down the music. Damn those teenagers. So when we travel, we gain a little better appreciation of what is the baggage that people are carrying when they respond to us. Their baggage, and they've got 1/4 of our population, is losing several 100,000 people when Saddam Hussein, funded by the United States, invaded their country. And that is baggage. And when you travel around Iran, every town's got a vast martyrs cemetery filled with victims of that war. And for me to see a widow sitting on the tomb of a dead loved one, as she's done every week for decades, knowing the propaganda she's lived through and the struggles she's lived through, That's baggage. I got to understand what she's going through if I can understand their country better. I wanted to know what makes 70 million Iranians tick, and I found out a lot by going to Iran.
Resurfaced photo shows of New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani with leftist streamer Hassan Piker, who once said America deserved 9/11. This is so funny. What a fucking hilarious line of attack. Yeah, dude. Since that, I got a fucking New York Times. I got a New York Times article written. They're panicking so fucking hard. What do you mean resurfaced, dumbass? I'm an American political commentator on the left, a progressive American political commentator on the fucking left. The largest one, as a matter of fact. The notion that, like, oh my God, they're a fucking Polymarket account. I didn't know this was, like, sponsored by Polymarket. Resurfaced. A big secret. Yeah. If only you knew, Newswire. I also did a 3-hour fucking broadcast with him. I know I was mentioned in Politico as well. They're trying to use every fucking avenue they can to attack him. Resurfaced equals I just saw it. Epstein affiliate Bill Clinton endorses Andrew Cuomo for New York City mayor. This is an internal struggle within the Democratic Party right now. Okay? An internal struggle within the Democratic Party. Do you actually want popular momentum? Do you actually want leadership that will fight for your rights? Or do you want old pedophile rapists to continue running the party and not do anything and just sit aside and allow people like Donald Trump, old pedophile rapists on the other side of the political spectrum, to dominate politics and dominate political discourse and slowly but surely make your lives worse year over year? Iran condemns U.S. strike on nuclear sites as criminal aggression, warns of regional escalation. Following the U.S. military strike on Iranian nuclear facilities, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi delivered a wide-ranging press conference in Istanbul denouncing the attacks as grave and unprecedented violation of international law and calling for an emergency UN Security Council meeting. Foreign Minister warned U.S. and Israel now bear sole and full responsibility for the consequences. Declared diplomacy suspended, suggested Iran's response could involve military retaliation or strategic escalations in the Gulf. Here are some key points made by the Iranian foreign minister in more detail. This was not just an attack on Iran. It was an attack on the UN Charter. Iran's top diplomat accused U.S. of crossing a red line by bombing peaceful nuclear sites in violation of Article 2.4 of the UN Charter and Security Council Resolution 2231. It was also, this is correct. It was also rule of law and international law which was bombed. And before people go, lol, peaceful nuclear sites. Yes, dude. They are targeting the civil nuclear grid. Okay? They have been striking every single nuclear power plant that is a part of the energy grid, the energy infrastructure of Iran. Okay? This is not even remotely allowed. This is completely not allowed. Demanding accountability from the International Atomic Energy Agency and the Security Council. The U.S. betrayal of diplomacy twice. Iran revealed it was in the midst of negotiations with both European powers and the U.S. when the attack occurred. We were in the middle of diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily, he said. He accused the U.S. of giving the green light to Israel to strike first, then following with its own attacks. Trump deceived his own voters. The foreign minister directly criticized President Trump for abandoning his promise to end U.S. wars, claiming that Trump submitted to the wishes of wanted war criminal by aligning with Netanyahu. He said the administration was now doing the dirty work for Israel, which is also true. Iran reserves all options. Declining to reveal military plans, the foreign minister stated that Iran reserves the right to respond under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Asked about the possibility that Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz or retaliate against the U.S. bases, he said, there are a variety of options available to us. This still shows a level of restraint, for the record, from Iran. The only people that have said, we're going to fucking take the war to you, have been people on Iranian television, with the red banner, the red flag raised and whatnot. But all of the Iranian leadership and their fucking statements have basically been fairly restrained, saying like, oh, we'll reserve a time and place. We'll reserve a time and place for what kind of retaliation we will show. Silence will plunge the world into an unprecedented level of danger and chaos. The foreign minister warned that international silence would have grave consequences. He called for the International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors in the UN to urgently convene, condemn, and take action against what he described as a blatant act of war by the U.S. We never trusted the West, and now we trust them even less. When asked whether Iran still has faith in diplomacy, the foreign minister replied, "We never trusted Western countries when we negotiated with them, and now there are even more reasons why we shouldn't trust them at all." Iran confirms regional diplomatic efforts underway. Iran confirmed meetings with officials from Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Russia, including an upcoming summit with President Putin. The minister said many regional states were willing to mediate, but right now my country is under attack. On Turkey's role, the minister praised Turkey's condemnation of Israeli attacks and its role as the OIC chair. They indicated they were on our side, he said, which is not true. They clearly aren't. They're a fucking NATO nation. But this is just playing the role of you have to play the role of diplomacy, which is to just basically act as though these countries are not directly antagonistic to your position in the region. On China and Russia, he described both countries as strategic partners and said Russia and China had already been working on a UN resolution before the strike. Iran will coordinate closely with Moscow on the next steps. Responding to Trump's threat of greater and easier future strikes if Iran doesn't make peace, the minister said, "It is not up to Iran to respond to that. It is the international community's responsibility to stop this madness. Indirect talks with the U.S. were underway but are now suspended." Iran said the recent negotiations mediated by Oman had been suspended, but that some channels remain open. More clips and details to come as we track the fallout across the region.
Security briefing in the Situation Room. But these images instead captured the most decisive, critical decision of his presidency so far. With his top team around him, he had ordered a strike on Iran's nuclear sites. Within a few hours, he was addressing the nation and the world beyond.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
We know now that a number of B-2 stealth bombers dropped numerous bunker-busting bombs on the Fordo nuclear site. It's located to the southwest of Tehran, and it's believed to be the country's main nuclear enrichment location. It lies deep underground, beneath a mountain. Navy submarines also fired 30 cruise missiles at other sites. It is not independently clear yet how successful the strikes were. But look at these, taken yesterday by Maxar Technologies. They show what's described as unusual truck activity at Fordo. 16 cargo trucks at the entrance to the site. So did the Iranians manage to move equipment before the strikes? It was only on Friday that the president was talking about a 2-week chance for diplomacy.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time. And I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
But the talks in Geneva with the Iranians were not a success, and his position changed.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
The threat there is clear, that the hardest bit has now happened, and that if he is pushed, he will go after the Iranian leadership. His judgment, it seems, is that one night of decisive, game-changing airstrikes will end Iran's nuclear program for good, but also force the Iranian government finally to de-escalate. It is a huge gamble. In Jerusalem, the Israeli Prime Minister was framing this decision as a new dawn.
His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace.
The jeopardy is now huge. The president is gambling that Iran will not have the capability or the guts to hit any of the many US bases in the region. The worst case scenario is that they do. If Americans are killed, this will spiral fast. And on Iranian state TV, the threats were quick and direct.
We were negotiating with the Americans when we were attacked. You made this choice. You started this. The 40 to 50,000 American soldiers in the region are now legitimate targets.
After days of ambiguity, a president now decisive. Where next? It is impossible to tell. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Interrupt you for 1 minute, Ali, because we're looking at some images that have come in the aftermath of some strikes, the ballistic missile strikes that Iran launched on Israel. And we understand this is from central as well as northern Israel, which is where the alerts were coming in from. Of course, we got an alert here in Jerusalem, but northern Israel, central Israel, over the course of the last few days has been hit quite hard. Haifa has been hit, and as has Tel Aviv. So this nation on high alert. You can see some of the damage done in those images.
Yeah, I've been to many of the impact strikes over the last few days, and the damage is extensive. I mean, do not underestimate the damage a ballistic missile can do, not just at the direct site of impact, but the blast wave that it gives off will blow out windows, blow off roof tiles, literally tip cars over for a pretty big radius, 50, 100 meter radius around. Now, one of the reasons that the death toll in Israel has been relatively low is because of safe rooms. Not every house has a safe room, although modern houses, it's absolutely part of the permissions you must get is to have what's called a mamad, a safe room in your house. But people they know where their bunkers are, so they go to them, and that helps save lives here. Also, the alarm system is incredibly sophisticated, and people obey it, and that helps keeps the death toll very low, despite what you're watching here, which is massive destruction.
Yeah, and
This is part of the reason why I said that the American intervention was for two different reasons. The American intervention was so that Iran would change its focus to American assets in the region, also in an effort to change its attention and its strike priorities away from Israel, because Israel's air defenses are diminished. I think this right here shows that reality, proves that reality. The day prior, they only spent drones. They only sent drones, and drones that actually passed through the Iron Dome, the Tamir interceptors that they have, which was also unique. This means that their anti-air defense systems are spent. They are exhausted. There are clearly issues with Israeli defense. This is the first time that Israel is experiencing repercussions for its dangerous escalations in the region. Israeli society is, for the first time ever, experiencing direct damage. A fraction of the damage that Israel brings about the entire region, that dishes out to all of its fucking neighbors, whether it be southern Lebanon, whether it be Lebanon in general, whether it be Gaza, obviously. Gaza is completely hollowed out at this point. It's just one massive crater. This has been an incredibly costly endeavor. Tamir interceptors are, I believe, 200,000 a pop, and they're lobbing a fuck ton every night. There was one example of a hypersonic that they sent, just one. 26 Tamir interceptors were launched to try and intercept, as a last resort, this one hypersonic missile, and that ballistic missile hit the target directly. This kind of tit for tat is also a war of attrition, an exhaustion of resources, and a way to deplete the existing anti-air defenses that Israel has. And while Israel claimed that they had a runway of like at least 2 weeks, we don't know what their stockpiles obviously look like. It's understandably confidential information. The way that we can make an assessment on how much their missile stock has depleted is by looking at the actual impact. And considering that early on, when Iran was expending their older missiles and sending barrages, sometimes 100 at a time, and having most of them get intercepted with like 1 or 2, if not 10, directly striking Israel. Now Iran is spending. Iran is sending ballistic missiles, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time, and the actual percentage of successful strikes has increased dramatically. It went from 10% success rate to like fucking 60%, 70% success rate. That is a real issue for Israel. So either they have to keep flying over Iranian airspace that they now dominate, as their claim is, and try to find the launchers and blow them up as quickly as possible, with the hopes that they don't have additional launchers out there that they can still continue lobbing hypersonic missiles directly at Israel's direction, which that's what they've been trying to do. Or they have to magically invent new missiles, and there's only a finite amount. And there's also a missile production that will take a tremendous amount of time. What does it mean to mine the Strait of Hormuz? The Strait of Hormuz is like a 32 miles or 32 kilometers? It's like a very small, it's a much tinier waterway, that 33 kilometer waterway that Iran could take complete control over with mines. It's very narrow. It's a narrow passage in a obviously like a much broader sea. This is here it is, the satellite image. The Strait of Hormuz is a strait between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. It provides the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean and is one of the world's most strategically important choke points. Now, the reason why it's a strategically important choke point is because 20% of all of the global oil comes from that choke point. It has to pass through. There is tremendous amounts of commerce, tremendous amounts of vessels that pass through for international trade, but more significantly than that, there's a lot of oil barrels that pass through this tiny patch of water that can be easily mined, and not easily, but like that can be controlled, at least for an extended period of time, that will be unimaginably disruptive to global trade. A third of the world's liquefied natural gas and almost 25% of total global oil consumption passes through the strait, making it a highly important strategic location for international trade. It has been so for centuries. Its vast hinterlands were rich in luxury trade goods with no easy access to lucrative trading ports. And as of today, the Iranian parliament voted to close the Strait of Hormuz in response to recent U.S. strikes on Iran nuclear facilities. If it's successfully blocked for an extended period of time, you will experience an oil shock.
That
everything
sort of
will go up in price.
Alert system that Iran doesn't have. In fact, many Iranians were talking about not knowing exactly when they should move, although the Israelis have said that they've sent them alerts, or there have been phone calls, automated phone calls, very much out of the Lebanon playbook, where they were telling them to get out.
Yeah, I should say as well, it is worth noting, that alarm system does not exist for Palestinians in the West Bank, for example. They don't have shelters, and there haven't been any missile strikes there. The falling debris has fallen there. Occasionally, actually, I say that, I think a missile did land quite close to Hebron the other day. The same goes for the Bedouin community in Israel as well. They often make the point that they don't have shelters, they don't have access to shelters. So that is always a problem. But yeah, the system here, the home front command system here, is incredibly sophisticated, developed, of course, over many, many years of conflict, but it is trusted, it is obeyed, and that does save lives. I was actually at a strike point the other day where a missile went directly into a safe room, and it did kill people in the safe room, but they say that as long as it doesn't literally hit you directly in that particular room that you're in, you know, your chances of survival are very good indeed.
Yeah, and many people question, the number of the number of ballistic missiles that have come Israel's way. Why is it that the death toll isn't higher? And it's exactly that point that people follow the sort of requirements and the rules that have been set out for them, and they get these alerts and stay underground, and that's why we have seen injuries. We saw a hospital hit the other day. Also, schools have been told, and other public places, people have been told, stay indoors, go into your bunkers, because, Ali, they do expect more ballistic missiles coming Israel's way.
Look, it's 5 to 9 on Sunday morning. This is the first day of the working week. And I know you're watching these pictures, but behind us, Yauda, are some of the main roads in central Jerusalem near the Old City, and I can see 3 or 4 cars, and that's it. At this time, on a normal Sunday morning, it'll be busy, busy traffic, but people are staying at home. They're not going to work, they're not venturing very far from their homes, and they're staying there because of the risk that is still being posed by Iranian missiles coming in.
Yeah, very much so. And this country, this nation, as well as this region.
Israeli economy is over. I mean, this is, I'm sure, not great for the Israeli economy, but the Israeli economy is basically propped up by the Western world anyway. So, I don't know.
Is currently now on high alert, and the images you're looking at right now are from a barrage of ballistic missiles that came Israel's way in the last 45 minutes or an hour or so.
Don't worry, guys. We'll give another $20 trillion to Israel, you know?
Of course, are following all the developments here from the ground. We've got our correspondents across the region. We'll be getting reaction from them. So do stay with us, but we are going to leave you with these images for now. We'll be back in the next few minutes.
And you're now watching an ABC News special report right now. This is a live picture from the Pentagon. As we noted, both Secretary Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman Kane are supposed to come and address the public in just a moment here. I can't tell from how far away this is. I believe that's them coming to the podiums right now. Let's go ahead and listen to this press conference from the Pentagon.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Last night, on President Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs,
Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated is just simple posturing. Okay? Make no mistake, because what Iranian leaders have said thus far is correct. And you will hear more and more from American leadership the exact same sentiment in the coming days. You will hear more and more of this from the Israeli leadership as well. They've already started saying this. What did Iran say in the immediate aftermath of these attacks? They said, you cannot destroy knowledge. We have designed our entire nuclear capabilities around withstanding these sorts of attacks. It is too late for America and Israel to, destroy the knowledge base necessary to rebuild and recreate a robust nuclear grid. This is the truth. They can try and kill as many nuclear scientists as they can, and Israel certainly has tried, right? They do these assassination attempts all the time, and successful assassinations all the time. You can try and blow up nuclear facilities that are deep underground. Obviously, they had already moved the enriched uranium away from the existing enrichment facilities in Fordow, and the fuselage facilities have seemingly remained intact in the aftermath of these missile strikes, even from the United States of America. But the only way to successfully stop Iran from building a civil nuclear structure, a power grid, is by effectively dismantling the regime and destabilizing this 92 million country. Okay? And America, while initially they stated, oh, this was a spectacular success, has already started saying we have the opportunity to strike again, and we probably should strike again, because the ultimate question here is not about nukes. The ultimate question here is about Iranian sovereignty. They do not want there to be a sovereign Iranian state. It is not in America's interest, clearly, because in an effort to maintain Iranian sovereignty, the Iranian leadership, no matter how backwards they might be, no matter how repressive they might be within the Islamic Republic domestically, have actually abided by international rules, international standards, diplomacy, and negotiation every step of the way. They've even allowed Israel to violate every single red line that they had created in this umbrella of deterrence that they've cultivated in the axis of resistance in the region. And the only time where they ever struck Israel directly was when Israel struck Iran. Iranian territory, violated Iranian sovereignty. Operation True Promise 1 happened with drone strikes to limited success, but it was unprecedented at the time in terms of retaliation, only after Israel blew up the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Operation True Promise 2 happened after Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, the principal negotiator that Israel was supposed to be negotiating with for a ceasefire in Tehran. And Operation True Promise 3 only happened after this denuclearization negotiation was happening with the United States of America, and Israel used that negotiation and diplomatic process as cover to do a targeted first strike. Only after that did Iran ever directly lob missiles in the direction of Israel. So, this to me shows that Iran is still desperately, in an attempt to continue its sovereignty, trying to work with the Western leadership. Great points. How do you respond to the inevitable take that Iran is the sponsor of all the terrorism in the region? They fund Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, ISIS. People, if they say Iran funds ISIS, they're about to be very shocked that it's actually Israel that collaborates and works with ISIS. Israel is currently working with ISIS affiliates in Gaza right now. Iran actually fights against ISIS, sometimes with Hezbollah, as a matter of fact. All of these other countries and all of these other groups, whether it be Hamas or whether it be Hezbollah or whether it be Houthis, are Iranian aligned in the region to create, like I said, an umbrella of defense against American and Israeli incursion. In Lebanon, Israel invades Lebanon. There is a popular militia force created called Hezbollah that successfully fights back against the Israeli invasion and creates creates some semblance of security for Lebanon that way. Hamas is militant, is a nationalist, militant, emancipatory movement for the Palestinians. Houthis are the Shia group, the Shia family that basically took over the government in the aftermath of a civil war. A civil war backed between factions, a civil war between factions that were backed by the Western world by way of the UAE or Saudi Arabia, and the Houthis that were backed logistically by Iran. Every single group, if you noticed, every single group that is automatically classified as terrorist groups in this region that are considered proxies for Iranian terrorism, with the exception of ISIS, which is America's obvious terror group, America and Israel's proxies in the region, are not there as a destabilization mechanism. They're there to demonstrate people's own fucking self-determination in their own countries against Israel and America's ambitions.
Chiefs will demonstrate. It was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful.
But yeah, I'm going to skip this, but, good job to Pete Hegseth for not leaking. He's a big boy, as he said he is.
You have been listening there to the...
But you will hear in the upcoming days from Israel first, okay, if not already tomorrow, you will hear in the upcoming days about how Israel has to keep striking Iran because it wasn't enough. They already have started, I believe, doing strikes in Iran after, for a brief moment, saying we're going to stop the strikes. That was bullshit. I told you it was bullshit. But
Defense Secretary and the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff briefing reporters and briefing the American public on that consequential strike, the airstrike on 3 Iranian nuclear sites that President Trump ordered that was carried out just about now 12 hours ago. You heard some of the details there from Secretary Pete Hegseth laying out the operational tactics here, the massive use of those so-called bunker buster bombs.
Faillennials, dude. Faillennials, rise up. This is just like Top Gun. This is just like Top Gun.
That, in the words of the head of the Joint Chiefs, essentially extremely severely damaged Iranian nuclear capabilities. I want to bring in NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, who is in the region for us this morning in Tel Aviv. And that is important here, Richard, when you heard from General Kane, this idea of extremely severe damage, because the question of what nuclear capabilities are left in Iran is central to this. The initial battle assessment is still ongoing here, but Secretary Hegseth says, at least in Fordo, the critical nuclear site that you've been talking about so much over the course of the last day, essentially there has been, in his words, destruction of capabilities there.
Well, the Iranians are putting out a very different version of events. They say that those 3 sites were evacuated ahead of time, that the materials inside were removed. We have not been able to verify that. We heard in this press conference repeated statements that they still need to do a full battle damage assessment. But the Iranians, at least as the officials are describing it, are trying to brush this off. They are painting themselves as the victims, that they were in the midst of negotiations, that they weren't stonewalling at all, and that they were trying to talk.
Don't skip the general. In a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution, said by General Dan Kane in this press briefing, in this press conference. They straight up admit it was planned from the beginning. Yep. I mean, there was ABC reporting that suggested that they actually trained under the Biden administration for exactly this, which, once again, is another glaring example of the thing that I say all the time that people yell at me over, but American foreign policy is uniparty. America has always wanted to, Iran is the final prize in the region. America's always wanted to pack up Iran. Okay? The idea that Iran would have violated it anyway is just spectacular cope. Here, number of installed centrifuges. Actual versus planned. Iran's nuclear activity has expanded rapidly. This time frame between January 26, when the JCPOA nuclear deal was implemented, the Iran denuclearization agreement, versus May 2018, when Trump withdraws from the U.S. deal, is when there are no installed centrifuges. They literally fucking, in compliance with the International Atomic Energy Agency, went in to the Iraq facility and actually put cement, like poured cement in the fucking facility. And if you noticed, even after the withdrawal, they still continue complying. They only start installing centrifuges again after Donald Trump, despite Iranian compliance, adds additional sanctions to Iran, hits them with another sanctions package in spite of their compliance, even though Donald Trump pulled out of the deal. So even if Donald Trump had not added additional sanctions packages to Iran, they might have still complied. Very fair with all American foreign policy decisions. it comes across as ruthless because America's foreign policy is pretty fucking ruthless and pretty brutal. But if, no matter who it is, if Trump does something good, I will say it. If Barack Obama does something good, I will say it. And as far as like normalization within the region, and as far as like bringing Iran back into the global stage as like a normal country, a sovereign nation, Barack Obama actually made a very important step in the right direction. And he only did so with a fucking massive sanctions package prior to the JCPOA, for the record.
That they characterize as unprovoked. So the Iranian version of events, very different. We heard a lot of details from this presser just now. 125 aircraft, many of them refueling planes, submarines involved, dozens of Tomahawk missiles, 14 of these massive ordnance penetrators used to attack Fardo primarily, which is a mountain where the bombs have to go through rock and reinforced concrete. So this.
What were you saying about Israel hating the JCPOA before you got interrupted? Yes, Israel's ambition for the greater Israeli project, which is in line with how America wants to use Israel in the region, made it so that normalizing relations with Iran was not in the question. It was not something that was appropriate by their goals. This is precisely the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States of America and delivered a joint session of Congress like he's the fucking head of state, in spite of Barack Obama's wishes. And on that joint session, he fucking daggered Barack Obama for this, for the JCPOA. And at the time, Chuck Schumer was also incredibly critical of Barack Obama for doing this successful denuclearization agreement. Trump has come out with a new tweet. The great B-2 pilots have just landed safely in Missouri. Thank you for a great job. Well done. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MEGA. That's crazy. Make Iran great again? I think he means make Israel great again. The damage to the nuclear sites in Iran is said to be monumental. The hits were hard and accurate. Great skill was shown by our military. Thank you. Why are you giving the Iranian state ideas how to respond? Don't you know they're watching your stream trying to figure out what to do next? Evet, 3'te yaparsan yerim ama yapabileceksen. Okay, peki. Yeah, he means make Israel great again. That's what he means when he says MEGA. I just finished protesting in front of the White House. A lot of pro-Iran and pro-Palestinian sentiment, like 3 Republicans arguing with everyone. I'm going to tell you right now, man, this is not going to be an easy battle here, okay? This is not going to be an easy battle for any of us because every step of the way they're going to say, oh, you just want women to be covered with a hijab, you fucking lover of terrorists. That's all these guys have, okay? So you need to remain steadfast. You need to know what your goals are. You do not want war. I do not want war. I want these resources to no longer be exhausted at the behest of a foreign nation state, Israel, and instead be exhausted on us, okay? That's it. It's a very simple message. And every step of the way, they're going to say, these guys are going to say, no, we have to actually bomb Iran for Israel because that's the best method forward. That's the best path forward. That's the path for peace. They'll say you hate America. They'll say you hate peace and stability. They'll say you're a terrorist lover. Okay? They'll demand you get deported. You have to remain steadfast. It's that simple.
This was clearly a massive, highly coordinated operation. To go back to your original question, was it successful? Did it eliminate all of Iran's nuclear capability? There's a lot of dispute about what Iran's nuclear capability really was. The intelligence on that has shifted somewhat. The IAEA has said just recently.
But as you said, Israel isn't a foreign nation. It's an extension of America. Yeah, but the fucking people that you're talking about don't understand that. So use that to your fucking advantage. That's it.
Just this week, that it doesn't believe that Iran had an active nuclear weapon program. It acknowledges that it had nuclear weapons, possible fuel, enriched uranium that could eventually be converted into a nuclear bomb, but no nuclear bombs on hand, no program to actively create those bombs. So this was a preemptive strike, building on Israel's preemptive strikes. And in this press conference, it was clear, and he was asked about the parallels to Iraq and parallels to the danger that the U.S. Had of mission creep. And he was trying to say it's one and done unless Iran responds. And we've already seen an Iranian response today. Here in Tel Aviv, there were Iranian ballistic missiles flying at this city, exploding in this city, exploding in Haifa shortly after the American mission was over. So far, we've not heard of any strikes against American targets in the region. So far, just the same kind of missile attacks that Iran has been carrying out against Israel for the past week, as Israel has been attacking Iran as well.
We thank you for watching.
Trump opened the regime change, actually. Yeah, no shit. Of course. He was always open to... I don't understand how people come in here and are still confused. I've been saying this literally since the first moment. Yes, that is the ultimate goal, okay? Yes, that is the ultimate goal. Make no mistake. When J.D. Vance says we're not at war with Iran, understand that as we are definitely at war with Iran. When they say we do not want regime change in Iran, understand that as we definitely want regime change in Iran. After this past week, how can you still be confused by this? They said we want negotiations with Iran. That meant we want to blow up Iran. It's that simple. Yeah, Yossi Cohen is also demanding it. Trump is already back to talking about regime change. After several Trump cabinet members expressed no interest in regime change in Iran this morning, the president sounded more intrigued in his Truth Social post on Sunday afternoon. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change. Yeah, it's actually woke. Wokes don't want you to say regime change anymore. That's why we say make Iran great again. Oh, God, it's so stupid. The thing that we're doing, like the way that we speak on these matters is also so idiotic. But if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be regime change? MEGA, he wrote. Here's Yossi Cohen. Former Mossad chief Yossi Cohen calls for Israel to carry out regime change in Iran, diverging from the official Israeli line. I would recommend to the prime minister and the enlightened world to take advantage of this phenomenal opportunity that we have to cause the complete fall of the regime, Cohen says in an interview with Channel 12 News. I think that the intelligence on this exists. This is why you come here, okay? I'm not saying don't listen to like MSNBC, New York Times, BBC, all these other outlets. You should. You should have a broad, diverse spectrum of ideology in your media diet. You should listen to Fox News as well. I certainly do. I listen to everyone. I factor all of that into my analysis. But when I tell you that my speculation on this, my suspicion on this, judging by everything that I've seen from every different perspective, my speculation or my suspicion, my analysis here is that they have always had this as the major goal. Okay? This isn't like a new goal either. This has been the goal. This has been the ultimate goal for both America and Israel. How you achieve this goal, of course, might be different. Israel's ambitions are different than America's in that regard. Okay? For the foreign policy decision of the United States, under the Obama administration, making sure that Iran does not does not make nukes, does not develop nukes, and therefore will not have any sovereignty, was achieved diplomatically. And it seemed for a brief moment that America would change their trajectory against Iran and perhaps maybe try to bring Iran into a normalized relation, a foreign state that can be a part of the Gulf, that can be a part of the other Gulf states, and maybe not to the same degree, because, of course, as long as Israel exists in the violent ways that it does, Iran was always going to resist against Israel. So there would be a lot of issues there. Either you would have to dismantle the greater Israeli project and then create diplomacy with even Iran, and therefore make it a much more peaceful region, or you were going to cast aside the JCPOA and go full tilt. Belligerent, violent, allow Israel to do whatever the fuck it wants in the region, which is precisely what Donald Trump signaled in his first term, and is finalizing in his second term. And he would not be able to do all of this if it wasn't for the dedicated efforts of Joe Biden. The Joe Biden administration that came between Trump 1 and Trump 2 created the perfect opportunity to let Israel lead the charge in our Middle East negotiations, in our Middle East endeavors.